Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Henry McCorkle, and I'm the Vice President for Membership and Marketing at the Florida Association for Childcare Management. We're delighted that you could join us for today's FACM Connect presentation. If you're not familiar with FACM Connect, it is our live chat series designed to bring our members and friends together with experts and thought leaders who offer unique insights and expertise to help your program become the best version of itself. Before we dive in, let me just cover a few housekeeping items. The first is that today's session is being recorded and will be available for future reference. The second is that this is a webinar format, so as an attendee, you'll remain unseen and unheard by others on the call. And if you have questions, we encourage you to type those into the chat or the Q&A. We will have some time for designated Q&A later on in the presentation, and we look forward to addressing your questions at that time. With that covered, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Dr. Julie Vogel. Julie is a third-generation educator with teaching experience from elementary through the university level, as well as K through higher education administration experience, serving as principal to associate dean. She currently serves as the National Education Officer at Renaissance, and with more than 30 years of experience working with all levels of education and leadership, speaking at state and national conferences, providing professional development, and focusing on educational and cognitive psychology research and practices. She is well-versed in applying learning theory in schools. Julie received her bachelor's degree from Iowa State University and her master's degree in educational leadership and policy studies, as well as her doctorate in educational psychology learning theory from Arizona State University. So Julie, we are honored to have you with us today. And with that, I will hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Much appreciated, Henry. So I think we are going to go ahead and get started. And Henry is going to pull up and share, hopefully, my presentation. Do you have it up, Henry?
It's not up yet. I'm working
Okay.
on getting it up now for everybody.
And while he's doing that, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. So, like Henry said, I'm a third generation teacher and a learning science theorist, basically since 2003. Was a classroom teacher and worked in higher ed for a really long time before that. And I've spent most of my adult life curious about how people learn and trying to figure that out over and over again in my life. And so it's definitely just something that is part of who I am and part of my genetic makeup. I will say that I do occasionally have free time, and in my free time, I love working with my hands. I'm an avid gardener and a wood turner. I'm also married, have raised three amazing children who are all able to stand on their own 2 feet and successfully navigate their lives. And that is a very important stepping point for my husband and I. We're thrilled about that. So, Henry, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide.
All right.
Today, we are going to be talking about the science behind early learning. And I find the science behind early learning a really interesting topic. And so we're going to learn a little bit about that. But before we do, and before I get into what I mean by that, I want to go to the next slide and I want to share our mission because at Renaissance, our mission is the same and has been for 40 plus years. And that's to accelerate learning for all children and adults of all ability levels and ethnic and social backgrounds worldwide. So, to me, since that mission has never changed and will always be something that we are aspiring to doing, I absolutely love it because I'm a very mission-driven kind of person. Next slide. We also have it in Spanish for those of you who have Spanish as your first language, the same thing. And in the United States of America, Spanish is our largest second population of speakers. So we want to make sure that you have access to the Spanish mission as well. And the next slide. Today, we're going to talk about why early learning matters, and we're going to talk through the key principles from learning science that are critical to implement in early childhood settings, whether that's in your daycare center, your own home, a preschool, preschool program, there are some key learning principles that we can implement to benefit the growth and learning of all of our younger children, no matter where you are or what kind of program you have, because learning principles are not programs. They are not curriculum. They are principles that have a long and strong basis in research. And today we're framing our conversation around three well-researched domains and the principles that support those domains. Today we're going to talk about agency for young learners. We're going to talk about early literacy for young learners, and we're going to talk about early numeracy for our youngest learners, and the principles that we can all implement no matter what program you're using, no matter what our model is, but it's how human beings learn, even at the earliest stages. And those principles can be applied anywhere using anything. So that's what we're going to work on today. And at the end, if we have time, we'll do a quick Q&A. So what I want to do right now is go to the next slide so you can have an overview of kind of this way that we're going to frame it. Since we have a very limited amount of time, I want to frame things very simply and easily for everyone in the room. And I want to say that we're going to talk about agency, literacy, and numeracy and the interaction between those three. So this chart is made from research that's been put together by a group of cognitive scientists for a group called Deans for Impact. And what they've really done is they've put together a nice summary of the existing research related to how young people develop skills across these three domains of learning. This is not the complete full picture of how kids learn. We don't have time for that in the short amount of time we have today, but these are three of my favorite topics in early learning that I like to share with people because I think there's things that we can all do that are easy to implement in whatever program that we're in. And it's really important to note that these arrows, if you look at this chart very carefully, they go back and forth between each other. So we can easily see how these things are interdependent because we know as children develop a sense of self and the ability to self-regulate, which we call agency, they are better able then to persist in learning literacy and math. On the other hand, right, as children develop their literacy and numeracy skills, they are also growing in confidence and independence, which strengthens their agency. So, what is this thing called agency? Agency, because that's where we're going to start today, is control over myself and my surroundings, and it can include things like, developing a sense of self, learning to respect others, and developing independence. All critical aspects of early learning and things that we want kids to do early. Literacy for this age encompasses helping children crack the visual code that is required for their language so that they can learn how to read and write. So the idea is to crack the visual code. They already have the auditory code because they know how to speak and they know how to listen and they can hear things. So now our goal in preschools and early learning programs is to crack the visual code that's going to be required for them to learn how to read and write when they get to school. And numeracy for very young learners is knowing. It's this whole idea of kind of, in a way, number sense, but not really. It's the whole idea of knowing that verbally counting, which kids do automatically, is related to quantity. Often young children can count fluently, even up to 20 or more, but they have no idea that those numbers represent sets of items. So this whole idea for numeracy is to get them to understand the difference between verbally counting and move to quantity. That's really all we're after in the early numeracy. So that's the big picture and the overview of these three things that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to start with agency. So why don't we go ahead and go to the next slide? All right. And so I hope you can see that. That pink isn't coming up quite as nice as I thought it would on my screen. And so we're going to talk about sense of self. And I mentioned that just a minute ago. It's our own perception and our attitudes and our beliefs. So sense of self is who we are, our perceptions of ourselves, our attitudes about ourselves, and our beliefs about things. This really truly develops over time, sometimes even over a lifetime, but it's really not stable during early childhood. It's why what you do in early childhood programs matters so much. So if you just click there, you'll go to the next part of this slide. So if you click on the next one, there we go. And we're going to talk about secure attachments because developing a strong sense of self from a learning experience means that kids really need secure attachments. They are critical. Young children, very young children, need emotionally responsive care. It's one of the primary components of developing a positive sense of self. Without secure attachments, inconsistent or stressful relationships, children are vulnerable, and that negatively impacts their sense of self. So, what can we do to help with this? As a child care center or a child care provider, you can make sure your teachers are emotionally responsive and sensitive to ensure warm, stable, and reliable relationships and environments. Some things that help that are teachers who are very consistent and have predictable routines and schedules, and those routines or schedules are known to children and they understand how things are supposed to go in the environment that they're in. And so that's really, really helpful for that. So plus their personality, right? We need warm, caring people surrounding our young ones. It's critical to their development. So if we could skip to, let's see, maybe click it again, Henry, and let's see what we get. Do we get the next piece of that, which I think should be concept of me? Yes. Around 2 years old, young children begin to figure out that this idea of themselves as a person belongs to them. They're like, oh, wait, I'm separate from mom. I'm separate from dad. I'm my own person. And they begin to understand or begin to recognize that they have emotions and they can be embarrassed. They can be proud. They can know when they've done something wrong and have shame. And the interesting thing about secure attachments and this idea of this concept of me is that they also begin to associate physical characteristics about themselves to differentiate themselves from somebody else. It's all with this idea of, oh, I'm different than the person next to me. I'm someone completely separate. So they start noticing their hair color. Oh, I have brown hair and brown eyes. They notice their height. Oh, I'm really tall or I'm shorter than everybody else. And they begin to have their own preferences about things. I love macaroni and cheese, but there's no way you're getting me to eat pizza. I do not like that at all. And they have perceptions about their own skills. I'm really good at jumping, or I'm really good at skipping, or I'm really good at listening. I'm not so good at sitting still. So kids start to notice these things and develop them. And so as a child care provider, it's really important to provide opportunities for kids to start developing that concept of me. And it's easy things that we can all do because it's a learning principle. So have mirrors in your program so that kids can study themselves in the mirror. Have different photographs of each other and the kids so they can start recognizing the differences and how they're the same. Do class activities that help them recognize things like their body parts. Remember head and shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Those kinds of things young children absolutely love. They're sing-songy, they're repetitive, and they help them start identifying the parts of themselves. Other things that you can do that are a little more serious, you can ask children open-ended questions about themselves. Um, Maybe they can share their favorite dinner and why it's their favorite dinner. They can talk about what their favorite TV show might be or tell them about their favorite book to help them build understandings of who they are. They can tell you about things that they don't like, too, as well. So I think those things are really important. The next section, so the next click on the screen, in regard to agency is this concept of self-regulation. Self-regulation is a huge, big step for young learners. And the self-regulation is the ability for young people to suppress impulses and not respond to distractions, to be able to change how they think and react to things and remember what their goals are. So when you put these together, you might also have heard a different term called executive functioning skills. Self-regulation, executive functioning skills go together. And these develop really rapidly in young kids, and they continue to develop until young adulthood. So getting a strong start on developing this self-regulation skills in early learning situations is really important for every single child. And one of the things that we can do and help with is providing consistency and predictability. All children, doesn't matter, even adults, all of us as human learners thrive with consistency. We like consistent schedules. We like being aware of what the plans are for the day. So it's really important in early learners that things like that stay somewhat consistent for them, that they know every single morning when they come in, my teacher is going to greet me a certain way. We're going to start the day doing certain things. I know what to do when I walk in the door. And that's really important to kids to have that. They know that every single day they're gonna, I don't know, maybe they're gonna go sit in on a spot on a rug, and the teacher's gonna review what they're gonna do for the day. So they know they hang up their coat, they sit on the rug, and they wait for the teacher to start their day. So those kinds of things are really important for kids. I do have one caveat though. In order to really help them grow with self-regulation, we want to provide consistency and predictability, but we also want to include a change every now and then so that children learn to navigate a new opportunity for self-regulation, right? So maybe there's going to be a field trip to another playground, or maybe there's going to be somewhere you're going to go as a group. Being able to help kids navigate that and learn how to self-regulate when there's new situations is also super helpful and really something important that we can do for kids. Another thing that we can do, so the next click on the slide, please, is to practice different scenarios with young kids. Okay, they love to act, they love to role play, they love to show what they know. And so this is always fun to do with young kids. And it's really important as adults that we help establish that routine and that kids understand what the expectations are for behavior. Here's what I know about teaching and learning, and here's what I know about all human beings. If we know what the expectations are and how we're supposed to behave and what we're supposed to do, we perform better. So, helping kids understand classroom behavior practices and routines, things like practicing the scenario, how kids will line up, because I don't know if you've ever been in a classroom of young people, but whoever is closest to the teacher is the prize winner, right? So everybody wants to be first in line because then they get to hold the teacher's hand when they walk to wherever they're going. I've seen it over and over in early learning settings. So, what we have to have is an established protocol that kids follow and they know what to do. So they know when their turn is. And when it's not their turn, they know where they're supposed to line up. And I think that's really important for kids to understand. So, you have to practice that. You have to practice how that's going to work. And that's okay. That's what you do to provide that consistency and predictability as you practice these scenarios for behavior expectations. For example, maybe you have a very specific way in your early childhood classroom that you want kids to come in the morning. You want them to do two things. You want them to shake your hand and tell them how you're doing today, and you want them to hang up their coat or their boots or their shoes, and you want them to go sit crisscross applesauce on the floor. Well, you know what? They're not going to learn how to do it if you don't role play and practice. And so that's why practice scenarios are so important. I used to do the crisscross applesauce sit on the floor with my hands in my lap because young children have a really hard time if they don't have their hands folded and sitting in their lap. It's really hard to not wiggle and not move around. So we would practice those things. With my little ones, when I was working with preschoolers, if I wanted their attention, I had a signal and I would practice with them and say, okay, when I want you to stop doing something and listen to me, I would say, attention, please. And I would wait. And everybody knew, every 3 and 4-year-old knew, oh, I'm supposed to stop and I'm supposed to look at Dr. Vogel and I'm not supposed to say a thing. Stop whatever I'm doing, look at Dr. Vogel and be quiet. And we would practice that over and over. So these scenarios are really helpful for kids. And finally, one more click on the screen, and that is this idea of games, right? So there are games that require impulse control that young children love. Things like Simon Says, right? Or the freeze dance, or role play waiting for a turn. All those kinds of things are super important. And the very last category of agency. So we've got sense of self, helping them figure out who they are, self-regulation. How do I manage my behavior? How do I learn how to wait my turn? Is independence. And surprisingly, people say independence, really, in preschool? Absolutely. And one of the key things is because it's essential for human growth for all of us. And it's really essential for young children because it helps motivate them to accomplish their goals. Now, I could have added motivation to this. I could have added other things. And if we had more time, I would have. But independence is a key piece of this. And so part of that is because it does improve motivation. And it also gives kids, notice I say provide choices. And I think sometimes we panic a moment. I'm not telling you not to be the adult in the room, but I am saying give them some choice within reason when you can, because it'll allow children to experience the consequences of their choices. And sometimes those are great. It can be easily accomplished by maybe having them talk through how they're going to use the materials at a center that day. Well, how am I going to use those? What are you going to do with it? Choosing an activity and sticking with it for a time period. Well, you chose to come to the reading center, so you don't get to leave and go somewhere else. You have to stay here for this allotted time. And if you don't like the book you're reading, go pick another one. But those are the consequences. You chose this, so you're staying here. And I think that's really important. And also finding the right balance between support that is just enough without adults taking control and doing things that kids can do themselves. If you're part of a Montessori preschool program, independence is a key characteristic of that, where children have to make those choices and find and help and do those kinds of things. So really important for all kids. Another effective strategy is to give clear and simple directions one step at a time. It is human nature for us to say four or five things all at once and expect kids to be able to follow them. Well, here's the deal. When you're 3 and 4, you can't do that. You just simply do not have the bandwidth mentally and the memory skills to follow more than one direction at a time. So take your time, keep your directions clear and simple, and one direction at a time. And you will find your young learners to be very helpful and supportive when you do that for them. And finally, the last one under this one is help them see that challenges are good for them, right? The beliefs young children hold about their own intelligence are really related to this concept of challenge, right? And the impact their self-concept and it also solidifies their approach to learning. If they believe their intelligence will grow, they are more likely to enjoy learning. They're more likely to question and try new things and persevere to overcome challenges. We can help with that by providing support and reminding them that, yeah, sometimes things are hard, but they can do it, and give them a little bit of support when they need it and back off when they don't, and encourage young children if things are hard for them and they need a short break. Okay, you can take a quick break, you can regroup, but I want you to come back to this because I know that you can do this and we can do it together. So those are the key pieces to agency. And those are the key principles right here. And hopefully you've gotten a few new practical strategies that you can use in your situations to help kids learn and grow. So let's go to the next slide. And we're going to talk about literacy here. Okay, and we're going to talk about early literacy. And literacy, folks, is a lifelong process. We never stop learning to be more and more literate. So, a really strong foundation in the early years sets children up for success when they start elementary school. So, I've got some things to think about. Here's some things just to keep in the back of your mind when we're talking about this early literacy and this whole literacy piece. Remember something important. Every single writing system all over the world, no matter what language you speak, employs a visual code for representing spoken language. So, learning to read and write requires children to crack the code for whatever language is their language where they live. So, let's think about our English system for a minute. Our English system is alphabetic, meaning each letter in the alphabet is a symbol for a spoken sound. Every single letter is a symbol for a spoken sound, and that is called a phoneme, right? So the letter C is called a phoneme. The sound that letter C makes is a phoneme. Any letter or group of letters that represents a single phoneme is called a grapheme. Don't care if you remember phoneme and grapheme so much as I care that you remember that young children are learning how to crack the code, the visual code for language. All right. So it's important to continue to build their what we call phonemic awareness, how they hear language and how they speak it, and how to link that with symbols. Okay, because symbols are letters and how to link it to letters. So remember, phonemic awareness includes the ability to hear and recognize individual sounds, right? And individual sounds in words to break them apart and to blend or connect and combine the sounds to write or read real words. So, for an example, let's think of the word cat. Very easy word, right? And break it down. K, k. C has the letter k in this case, a hard C, k. A, a is the letter A, and then t, t is the letter T. And so kids have to learn to blend them. K, a, t. And you have to say a little bit faster. K, cat, cat, cat. Oh, cat. And they're blended into the word cat, which allows young children to learn to both read and write words. Here's the thing about letters and the visual code. Kids have to be taught this. It does not come naturally like language does. We have been learning for millennia through language. We have not been learning reading for nearly as long as we have been learning language. So reading requires explicit instruction. And here's some things you can do with very young children, very, very young children. And it's really fun to do because they're going to want to learn how to do different things related to literacy. So one of the things that you can do in your classroom is, maybe you have a photo of every kid. You have a chart up there that has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the kids come in and they write just their first name in next to their photo on Monday. Then they come in Tuesday and they write their first name again. And they do it for the whole week. And then on Friday, they look over all five of them and they say, which one was the best? And then they pick their best one. And they compare it to their picture and the name that you have written underneath their picture. So my oldest son, his name is Riley. Lots of girls name Riley these days, but he's a Riley. And so he used to do this in preschool, and they had his name Riley written there. And every single day he would try and write his name the very best that he could, working on trying to figure out how those letters worked. And at the end of the week, he'd pick his best one and circle it and put a heart in it. And then he would tell a partner why it was his best one. So, really kind of easy way to get kids into this early literacy mindset and start helping them break the verbal code of understanding his name, Riley, by hearing it and then being able to write it. And then here's the other thing you have to do in early learning. You have to explicitly teach letter sounds. Has to be done. There is no way around it. And reciting the alphabet isn't enough. It's a really good start, right? Because we want the kids to know the alphabet, and there's fun songs that you can do, and you can point to all the letters as you go. But it's a start, but it's not enough. Teaching the sounds that letters represent is helpful for young children. So they can also learn to write the alphabet letters and associate those with new words, right? So you could do simple things like, what person in our class has a name that starts with the S sound? Maybe it's Sally or Sam or Sarah. And kids can start connecting the S sound with people's names, and then you can write the letter S. Very simple, easy things to do. So I want to go to the next one now, and you're going to laugh at this. You say, what are you talking about, Julie? We are working with young people. They are not going to be fluent readers. We are not expecting you to have fluent readers in early childhood programs, but you do have a huge impact on their success with reading by the support you provide early on. And here's how you can do that. And here's what is my personal favorite of all times that never gets enough attention. In order to have fluent readers, one of the best things we can do for kids is to read aloud stories to them. Does that sound crazy? Reading aloud is one of the most deeply and widely researched things in learning theory. And it is good for babies all the way to adults. So being read to out loud really helps us with all kinds of things. And with working to young kids, there's some simple, easy things you do when you read aloud to them that really help them get on track for being ready to learn how to read when they get to kindergarten and first grade. So one of the things that you can do when you're reading out loud that is super easy, and any teacher can do this, and you can really, if you're a leader of a school group, get them moving on this. So you can point to text word by word. So as you're reading, you're following along, you've got your finger going across the page, and this helps kids connect this idea that, oh, in English, we read left to right from top to bottom. And every time that teacher moves their finger, it matches a spoken word to a written word. So they're starting to make those connections. And then when you can, point out images between the text and the pictures in the story. And if the text repeats, oh, this is my all-time favorite. Young children love to join in. So while you're reading along, if it's a rhyming story and something that repeats itself over the pages, they can follow along. And then even though they've memorized it, they're still starting to understand that concept of, oh, every time the teacher moves her finger, I'm moving to a new word, and I am starting to make that connection between what I hear and what I see on a page. And it's an amazing thing to do in your classroom. And you can have those books available and they can practice it on their own. And you will often see, I used to see my daughter when she was 18 months old, and she would be sitting on the floor with all of her books surrounding her, and she would be pretend reading, and she would have her finger and she'd be following along just like she was reading the book herself, making up her own story, never sure what she was saying that young, but she was making that connection that, oh, you read from left to right. And she was following along with her fingers and talking herself through the story. The next one that I want to share with you is comprehension, because believe it or not, we do a lot when they're young to help with this. And reading to young children, like I said, really helps with vocabulary development and conceptual understanding of the story. And so it's great to always ask questions, right? Reflect on the story, ask the kids questions about it, have the book available, tell them to do other things with the book. Excuse me. One moment. Sorry about that, allergy season. Encourage children to act it out or come up with a different ending, anything to re-engage in that story. The other thing about that is read a variety of genres from a variety of domains. Young children love factual books. So read them from science books, geography books, read about maps, read about other cultures. They love learning about other places. Read fables and classics and stories that they know. It increases their background knowledge. And early learners need to have a backpack full of background knowledge before they enter elementary school, because that's what's going to build their success and keep them on track for reading and writing once they hit school. So lots of background stories, lots of opportunities to engage in print, lots of opportunities to be read to, lots of opportunities for them to write their own stories their own way is really wonderful. Rereading is also fun. Kids love this. I don't know if that's something you're familiar with, but kids love to have things repeated. It builds confidence. It builds their agency. They remember something, they know it, they can do it again. It's why they love to reread their favorite books over and over and over again. It's why they love to watch the same episode of Dora the Explorer. I don't know if that's still on anymore. They love to listen to the same songs on Rafi. He was a Canadian singer that my kids loved and enjoyed for years. So things like that really improve comprehension, cement background knowledge and skills, and get kids ready for reading when they start school. Finally, whoops, let's go to the last one here and talk about writing. And you said, oh, wow, writing? I've got to teach them how to write when they're here? No, you don't. You're not teaching them necessarily how to write per se, but you are teaching them some pre-writing skills. And you can really improve a young child's ability to start school on track by working with writing. And fine motor control and drawing are younger children's first steps toward writing. right? So learning how to hold the pencil, learning how to draw with crayons, all that kind of stuff, scribbling, whatever that is. The next step is scribbles for writing, and the final is conventional writing and spelling. How do we help that process with early learning programs? Teach kids how to handle a pencil, teach them how to hold a pencil, teach them how to generate ideas and put them in a sequence. Maybe you can say, let's write a story of what we're going to do today. And you can write out, and the kids can help you write the story and draw it. And then you can write out what you're going to do, and they can retell what their day is going to be like. If there's a story you've just read, you can have students go back and rewrite the story in their own words. And that's really fascinating. I still have from preschool some of my kids' very first books where they were attempting to write stories and have pictures that went with them. And then underneath it, the research may not be as thorough for this, but it really helped my own children. And there's research that supports it that says what you do when kids do that and they write their story underneath it, and you can't, but you have them reread it to you and you say, can I write what that word looks like in print underneath it? And then you write what the word looks like. So they begin to connect their scribbles to what the real word underneath it looks like. And that does amazing things for pre-writing. So but then when they're ready to go, they've got it in kindergarten. So it's one of my favorite things. Um, and let's see, was there one more thing I wanted to talk about with that? Let me just think for a minute with writing, because writing is an important thing for all kids. Draw and write, and good enough for now. So maybe having them rewrite things, having you as the teacher go back and have them read it to you, what they just wrote, and then putting the real words underneath their story would be really helpful. Now remember, we're not generating writers who are writing on their own. Maybe some of your preschoolers will by the time they're ready to enter kindergarten, but many of them won't be there. But it's making those connections between what they hear and what they write, and that those symbols, the things that they hear become symbols, and those symbols are something that they can visually decode. So some important stuff. So let's move on to the last one. And this is numeracy. So I'm an educational psychologist. I love numbers. I love data, and early numeracy is really important to me. And in preschool programs, we're talking about early numeracy. And there's the one big thing that really needs to happen, and it's learning to count and what counting means. That's the most vital thing in preschool. Hands down, one of the most important things that kids need to learn, because young children often learn to count procedurally. So if you look up there, I have procedural for that first hurdle. And that means they can recite the count sequence. Maybe they could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they can be really accurate. And they might even make it up past 20 and be really accurate. Because they naturally include counting in their play, and they naturally have these experiences. So they have this conceptual understanding that counting is something. But the interesting thing about that is they don't really know what that means. It's just something they've memorized and figured out how to do. So procedurally, we have to get to that next step in preschool. And that next step is understanding one-to-one correspondence. That is matching what they count to actual objects, right? And we think that kids know how to count because they can count. But what they can't do is match it to actual objects. And so it's that one-to-one correspondence that is an early numeracy concept that really they have to grasp in preschool. And so we support that by having children count out a certain number of objects. For example, have them count out 3 cubes. 1, 2, 3. So they have 3 cubes and they've counted them. 1, 2, 3. Those are 3 cubes. 3. And have them do that with smaller numbers until they've just got it down without ever, and then keep moving on to larger and larger numbers. All right. Because that's really going to help them see, oh, if I say 1, I have one thing. If I say 2, I have 2 things. And so it's really helpful for that. Another really important concept is what I call the it's not what I call, it's what we call in the research world, the cardinality principle. Knowing that the number of items they have counted is equal to the last number said. If they understand this, then they know and learn that counting determines the number of items in a set. So if you say, let's go back to three, one, two, three, and they say, how many things do you have? They should immediately be able to say, I have three. That's cardinality principle, understanding that the last number they said is the determining number of the things in that set. It's a much harder concept than you might think, so lots of practice doing that is helpful. And finally, when we get to quantity, this is where we want them by the end of preschool. Understanding quantity involves understanding many ideas beyond counting. This is where I think multiple representations are really helpful and numerical symbols play a huge role. Because remember, we're trying to get kids to break that visual code, right? And so they are moving from hearing things to seeing things and knowing what they mean. So symbols play a huge role. So, for example, you have to explicitly show young children different representations of the same number. This is how they figure out quantity. So, for example, you might show them the symbol for the number three. And in the United States, it's Arabic numbers, so it's number three. So you would, show this is three. This is what three cubes looks like as a number, three. And then you could show them three sets of three identical objects and have them build more. For example, you might show them three clothespins, or maybe three of the same kind of leaves from a tree, three identical objects that could be anything. And then you have the kids build more of their own sets of three identical objects. And then you say, you know what? There's a number three, and then there's a word for three, and you show them the word for three, THREE, and you talk about that. And so that kids start making these connections between the number, the word, and the actual objects themselves. Then you go one step further and you say, okay, now we're going to have sets of three, but they're going to be sort of different but related things. So it might be a pear, an apple, an orange, three types of fruit. It might be three vegetables. It might be three different kinds of pizza, whatever it is. But you're linking similar but different representations so that they can learn how to apply those in the future. And then this is my favorite because really shows that they are ready for school, is if they can count a set of items. Any set you have, say they have five things. One, two, three, four, five. And they count that in front of them. Then, as the teacher, you slide in and you say, now I'm going to add one more to that. Now, what do I have? And if they can automatically say six without doing the whole thing again, they are ready for kindergarten and ready to start working with bigger number sense kinds of things. So that's really fun. And really, you have to do it over and over and over again, but they will start to catch on. And once they can do that, then we know. It's also really fun to have them comparing two different sizes of sets of things and ordering by their size. Maybe they count to three, or you have a one group with three things and you have a group with five, and you say, okay, which one's larger? How do you know? Order things from largest to smallest, from smallest to largest. And my favorite one, there's a big education word or a big research word called subitizing. Depending on where you live, it's subitizing. But that means being able to quickly identify the number of objects in a small set without counting. So here's the thing. All human beings are born with the propensity to do math. Every single one of us is. And what that is, and the reason we know that is because of this concept of subitizing, which means that you can very quickly identify the number of objects in a small set. And for all human beings, it's really up to four, maybe five, without counting. So if I hold up a piece of paper with three dots on it, you should immediately say three without having to count the number of objects on there. And most human beings, no matter where you live in the world, no matter if you're literate or not, can do that really well up to about five. After five, a lot of us have to start counting. So if you have one that has 10 different dots all over a piece of paper, chances are some people are going to have to count those, right? They're not going to be able to just look at it and go 10. And it takes them longer to do that. Babies can do this. Infants can tell the difference between two and three. So they know that there's a difference when they stare at those objects and they stare at two dots for a while, then someone puts three, and then they realize there's something different and they stare at it longer trying to figure it out. So it's amazing, but sabotaging is a key thing to do with kids because you want them to be able to do that 1 to 5 without having to think about it and play games. Lots and lots of games with kids, especially young kids. They love games. To practice counting and to connect representations of numbers in informal ways. My favorite game, believe it or not, with young kids, shoots and ladders, because it really helps them with all the early numeracy concepts. So if we can go to the next slide. We've taken a look really at three big areas and principles of the science of early learning: agency, which is executive functioning, self-regulation, figuring out who you are as a human, to early literacy and early numeracy. All of these are learning science principles within them that are important for early childhood development. And we've provided some practical ideas for making it happen in your world, which is, I really hope, something that you can find a new idea here that you can take back to your school, or you can take back to your teachers and help them with this. These are not programs or curricula. They are learning principles that apply no matter where you go or no matter where you are, because mainly most human beings learn things the same way. So we can go to the next one. What I'd like you to do on the next slide is, maybe just for a minute, if you could, for me, just take a moment. And I know it's hard to participate because, you're never sure where that's going to go, but I'd really like to know if you could share in the chat maybe one new idea from today that you learned, one new thing that you can take back to your group or to take back to your team or your school, anything that you would like to share. This is the audience participation part, and I know that can be intimidating at times, but if you get a chance, please do so. Oh, here, I got to see everyone. So for me, all right, no brave takers today. Sabotaging was a review for me. I had forgotten about that. It's been a while since I've worked with really young kids day in and day out. Um, oh, Tina, thank you for being a brave soul and putting it out there. And I loved hearing help them see challenges. Yes, challenges are good for them. And we often, we love our young children. We want them to be successful. We never want to see them struggle with anything, but struggle is good. Struggle is helpful. It really helps them learn and grow. Oh, and I agree with you. We know this, but it is often forgotten. It sure is. And we don't want to forget that. We just want to give them skills and strategies if they need to take a break for 5 minutes and come back to it. But we don't want to let it go. We want them to work through that challenge, because the sense of pride that comes with it has a direct effect with how they see their ability to learn. And we want them to continue to see that they can complete hard things, they can complete challenges, and they have the piece to do it. Thank you for sharing. It means a lot when you put things out there for everyone. All right. Anyone else? Any other takers for that? Having fluent readers reading to children builds future fluency. Absolutely. And I don't think we understand that enough. And I don't think we focus on that enough. So thank you for including that. I am the world's biggest believer in reading aloud to kids every single day, as much as you possibly can. It is so valuable for helping them become fluent readers, for helping them understand how print works, for helping them see the kinds of things that real readers do. And it is so helpful. You have no idea all the things it builds for kids. And the more that kids can do that with you, the better their reading becomes as they get older, and the faster they catch on when they're working on phonics and phonological awareness and blending and all those things that happen in kindergarten and first grade. So very important. And here's the thing, we all like to be read to. Seriously, even as adults, I still like to hear someone tell a good story. It's lovely. It's why I like a really good book on tape sometimes rather than reading it myself. It just does something different for me. So it's a new way to look at the world. Excellent. Well, let's go to the next slide for us. I have one more here that I really want to share with you. If you have any questions for me, I'd really like you to go ahead and put them in the chat or in a Q&A if you have a Q&A option. I don't know, but chat is fine. And I do want to tell you, I am an assessment and a learning theorist by trade. So, I'm going to love numbers, I'm going to love data because that's who I am and what I do. And at Renaissance, we do have an early childhood screening program so you can know where your kids are in their early learning trajectories called My and My is a one-on-one assessment situation. It's very low key, but it gives you a tremendous amount of wonderful information to help you figure out where your youngest learners are and what kinds of things you can do next with them. So if you're interested, let me know. If you're not, that's fine. Use those kinds of things because they're really, really important. And My is a wonderful, wonderful way to ensure that you have excellence in your programs and in your schools. Let's see. And if no Q&A comes up, that's fine. I think we're good for that. Does anyone have a question? I'm not seeing any, Henry. Um, so I think we can go ahead and move to the next slide then if we don't have any questions, but I will hold the Q&A and the chat open just in case we do. I do want to thank everyone for your time. I know that Henry will send the slides out to you, and I will have a list of resources that I'm going to include with those slides from where I got the information that I'm talking about today and some other things that might be important to you to think about. This is my contact information, julie.vogel@renaissance.com, right on the screen there. And it has my phone number there. So if you ever have a question that maybe you didn't want to put out there in the group, or if there's something that I can help you with, um, I live for helping people that help kids, because I think the work that you do is probably the greatest gift you can give to any society, and that is to help our kids be the very best people that they can be because they're going to be adults someday and they're going to be running the show. And we want to make sure they have everything they possibly can at their disposal within themselves to be the very best future generation we can help them to be. So thank you again for your time. And Henry, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, Julie, thank you for taking the time to present this information to our members today. Personally, I learned so many things from this presentation, and there were some wonderful reminders as well. So thank you, and I too hope that the folks on the call today, are taking something away with them that they can implement in their programs. As we close out, I just want to mention to everyone that if you got something out of this presentation today, if you learned something new, Julie is going to be at our conference in June. So that's another wonderful opportunity to take in some more information and learn something else that you can bring back to your program. Um, and just to remind everybody, our conference is coming up June 19th and 20th at the Universal Orlando. We are still accepting registrations at this point, though those seats are filling fast. So if you are interested in attending, I'm going to put a QR code up on the screen. You can just scan that, and that's one way to go ahead and register. Um, there we go. There we are.
Nice.
With that, if you have any follow-up questions, again, we will be sending out the slide deck that Julie presented with today, and that includes her contact information in that, so you can certainly reach out to Julie directly. You're also welcome to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to put you in contact. And we'll be sending out the recording of today as well. So if you want to go back and listen or learn something again, you're certainly welcome to do that as well. So with that, again, Julie, thank you. Thank you to everyone that took the time to be here this afternoon. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.